We are joined by General Stephen Townsend. He is the head of U.S. Africa Command. Thank you so much for speaking with Voice of America.
Thanks, Carla. It's good to be here.
And so tell us a little bit about why you are here in Washington.
Sure. So it's testimony season. Happens every year about this time of year, and that's why I'm here. I appeared before the Senate Armed Services Committee today, and later this week, the House Armed Services Committee. So that's why I'm here in town. While I'm here, there's some things going on back in AFRICOM and Africa. So on the West Coast, we have one of our major exercises called Obangame Express. It's run by our naval component. It's a maritime domain, maritime security-oriented exercise. And there are 32 nations participating in Obangame Express, and it's hosted by Senegal this year. So that's a really good exercise for us. Participating in that exercise is our only U.S. warship in AFRICOM, the Herschel Woody Williams. It's an expeditionary staging base. And while it's a big platform with a flight deck on it and it can hold a bunch of troops and a bunch of supplies, while that doesn't seem particularly exciting probably for a lot of theaters of the world, it's absolutely the perfect platform for us in AFRICOM because it can stage troops and it can go anywhere and respond to crisis and be in position for a long time if necessary. That ship is only about 2 years old, and she has done more port calls than we have done in the last 5 years before her arrival in Africa. Then we have one more exercise going on, and that is Justified Accord in East Africa. And that's a land exercise run by our Army component, and it's designed to improve African partners, prepare them for peacekeeping operations with the UN or the African Union.
So, sir, let's start off with your testimony for the Senate Armed Services Committee earlier. You talked about the Russian mercenaries in Mali. You said that there were about 1,000 of them there. What more can you tell us about what they're doing?
Interestingly enough, the Malian president told me that these aren't mercenaries or even contractors. They are the Russian military that they've dealt with for so many years. Yet, just a week or so later, the Russian government denied that there were any military there, that it was only a private military corporation that the Kremlin had nothing to do with. So we think there are about 1,000 of them there now. They've arrived over the last couple of months. For the most part, they're still getting organized, establishing their base camps, deploying their troops, gaining capability, although we have seen them run a few operations, and I believe they've actually taken a few casualties. So it's too early to tell how this is going to go. My prediction is it's not going to go well for Wagner, and it's particularly not going to go well for the people of Mali. I believe that they're going to regret inviting them in.
You had said the Russian military is supporting them. Do you see that sign of support for these Wagner Group folks still in Mali, or have they moved out because of Ukraine?
We've seen less of that support, but let me be clear. Everywhere we have seen Wagner go in Africa, and I also faced off with Wagner in Syria, we have seen signs of support from the Kremlin and the Russian Ministry of Defense. So, for example, the Russian Ministry of Defense flew Wagner and resupplied them, flew them into Mali and resupplied them. We saw them provide weapons, sophisticated weapons that only armies own, not private military companies might own, like sophisticated surface-to-air missile systems and even jet fighters. We saw that in Libya. So we have seen less of this direct support, I think probably because of what's happening in Ukraine right now. I think the Russian military has its hands full. I will say that I'm not sure that the Russian military likes supporting Wagner. It seems like it's something they have to do more than something they want to do.
What about the numbers slowing in? Have you seen that slow? Have you seen some of the numbers decrease because maybe some in the Wagner Group are going up to fight in the war for Ukraine?
It's possible that we've seen it slow, but we haven't really discerned that yet. What we are seeing is we're seeing some efforts to recruit Wagner units for Ukraine and they're going out to their global enterprise asking for volunteers. And we're seeing that happening in Africa, although I think primarily they would probably deploy or redeploy from Libya, most likely.
And what about CAR?
There's a considerable number of Wagner employees there, probably more Wagner mercenaries there than in any country in Africa. I would anticipate that they would provide some Wagner fighters for the Ukraine fight as well. If they're looking for volunteers, they'll find some there.
Now, General, you share resources with European Command. You're based in Stuttgart. With everything going on right now in Europe, have you seen a reduction of some of your resources as they've been diverted to European Command?
Yeah, I would say we have seen some reduction in those resources, but it's not significant to our and not harmful to our operations. So first of all, we have actually pushed resources towards EUCOM. AFRICOM has provided about 30 personnel, mostly intelligence analysts and planners and folks like that, to help EUCOM during this crisis. And we share some ISR surveillance capabilities. We have pushed all of those to EUCOM that we share, and in fact, EUCOM has pushed some back to us that was excess to their needs. We've seen some impacts to things like airlift because, we're reinforcing NATO. So we're pushing troops and units and equipment to the NATO frontier, and we're also supplying aid to Ukraine. And so those flights have slowed down some things for AFRICOM, but I wouldn't say that they've had significant impact to our operations.
So you're still able to carry out your missions?
Absolutely, yep.
And I want to switch gears and talk a little bit about the other big player in Africa, China. You had talked to us earlier about Equatorial Guinea, how that was a place where China had been looking at wanting to have a base, that they've been wanting a lot of places, basically throwing the chips out, I think was the way that you termed it, to try to get a base on the Atlantic. I noticed that there was a State Department and AFRICOM delegation that went there last month. Were you able to get any assurances from Equatorial Guinea that they would resist Chinese efforts to build a military base?
So you're right. The Chinese have placed bets or chips down on almost all of the countries along the Atlantic coast. They're seeking a base there, a naval base, a military base. And where we see them have the most traction right now is Equatorial Guinea. And so, as you just said, there have been a couple of delegations that have gone there over the last year or so, one recently. It was a whole of government, an interagency delegation that went there. AFRICOM participated in that delegation. And they were well received in Equatorial Guinea. The leaders there emphatically deny that they plan to have a Chinese base in their country. So for now, we'll take them at their word and we'll watch what they do. We'll watch carefully to see what they do. We're not trying to tell them that they have to choose between the U.S. or the West and China. That's not the choice they have to make. They just have to respect what our concerns would be, our security concerns would be, and they can have a relationship with China. They can even have a relationship with the Chinese military. But we would be concerned if that relationship progresses to a Chinese military base in Equatorial Guinea.
And on the other side of the continent, they have the base in Djibouti, very close to the United States. Where else are they looking to build a base? There's been some whispers about looking along the Mozambique Channel. What are you hearing?
Broadly across the continent, they're looking for bases wherever they can find them because it's a part of their long-term military strategy in the world. We saw that they had some traction some time ago in Tanzania. Then Tanzania had a change of government, and that talk of that base has slowed down considerably. And I think that would be good. I think it would not be good for Africa to have a Chinese military base there in Tanzania. You mentioned the Mozambique Channel. We know that they have been soliciting for bases with all the countries down there along the Mozambique Channel, to include the little island nations there. And they haven't found traction thus far. Then coming up the Atlantic coast, I think probably the place where, as we just discussed, they have the most traction is Equatorial Guinea, although the leaders there assure us that it's not going to happen. And then I think probably the other place we've seen discussed would be a country like Gabon. They might entertain that, but they haven't really extended that offer to the Chinese yet.
What about a country like Somalia? A weak government that needs an economic influx, frankly. Have you seen any conversations going on with the Chinese and the Somali government?
So there are conversations with the Chinese and the Somalis that happen regularly. We'll just have to see.
About a base?
They discuss a lot of things. They have discussed a base. And, the Somalis tell us that they are our partner and that they won't partner with the Chinese. So we'll leave it at that for now.
And let's talk again about some of the lesser known influences in Africa. You had mentioned to me the last time we spoke about how Iran is trying to make inroads in Africa. We've seen just recently what they are capable of doing in Iraq. What more are you seeing from Iran? Are you seeing anything from Iran in recent days?
It's fairly quiet. They try to fly under the radar. For a number of years, I think Iran was tied up with other concerns in the Middle East, and they weren't very active in Africa. Since early 2020, we have seen them, their interest level in Africa go up, and they are very interested in Africa now, and they're probing with a number of things, ways on the African continent, specifically with equipment. We're seeing the emergence of Iranian UAVs, for example, on the African continent. And that's one example of they're trying to offer things that the African partners might be interested in having and then use that as their foot in the door. So we're watching Iran. I don't think Iran has Africa's interests at heart. They're up for their own malign purposes, in my view. And so we're going to just keep an eye out for Iran in Africa.
Senior defense officials have talked about potential attacks against Americans and American interests. Are you seeing that?
From Iran?
From Iran, yeah.
Yeah. After in the wake of the strike on Qasem Soleimani, the IRGC Quds Force commander in January of 2020, we did see some plotting that had the hand of Iran in it. And they were plotting to kill senior American officials in Africa. And I think famously, this was in the media actually, they had plotted to kill the U.S. ambassador to South Africa at that time. That plot was disrupted, and we haven't seen anything attack plots like that. So if you've heard of that, it probably has to do with those from 2020. We haven't seen that recently.
So no recent plots that they've been doing, that you're tracking. And let's turn back now to Somalia. That's a place where you were very forceful in your testimony about what's going on with the mission there. You had told VOA that commuting to work, as you referenced the U.S. mission in Somalia, that it was less effective and less efficient. You told Congress today that it was not effective, not efficient. It puts troops at greater risk, a lot more forceful. Can you expand upon that?
So our mission is, our assigned mission is to disrupt al-Shabaab and to grade their external operations capabilities, to lessen their external operations capability over time. That's the mission. How we're doing that is within the constraints we've been given by a decision from the previous administration, which was periodic engagement, or as you said, and as I have said before, commuting to work. What we've tried this now for about 15 months, every which way you can imagine. Short, long, in the middle, long break, short break, in between, do it this way, do it that way. I have come to the conclusion, as have my subordinate commanders who are doing this activity, that it is less effective, less efficient, and it increases the risk to our troops. The risk is in moving in and moving out. This might seem counterintuitive, but once a unit is on the ground in Somalia and they have their sensors out and their defenses up, it's safer to stay there than it is to come and go and to unpack and repack and reload and unload time after time. So that's why I think it's inefficient. It's certainly less effective. We're not there long enough to get momentum, and then we start over.
And sir, I have sources who have said that operations have been canceled in Somalia as well, on top of having to go in and go out. Can you confirm that? Have you had to cancel some operations just because of the circumstances? Is it a resourcing thing, possibly?
Yeah, that's possible. It sure is. We have razor-thin margins for our resources, so it could be. Back in November and December, you may remember that the Ethiopian civil war was reaching a bit of a crescendo. The rebels, the Tigrayan rebels, were marching on the capital, and they were closing to an uncomfortable distance from Addis Ababa, the capital. At that time, we were planning to take our embassy personnel out if we had to. Because of the resourcing challenges you mentioned, we actually canceled the periodic deployments, periodic engagements in Somalia to bring those troops out. So we didn't want to have a division of attention and resources with something happening in Somalia while we knew we were doing crisis management in Ethiopia. So my Special Operations Commander recommended to me that we withdraw our forces temporarily from their periodic engagement in Somalia while the Ethiopia crisis was playing out. And so we did that in November, December timeframe. As it played out, the Ethiopian government gathered their forces and they counterattacked, and they have pushed the Tigrayan rebels back into their safe haven in Tigray, where it stands now.
And you have made recommendations to the Secretary about the mission in Somalia. You told VOA that in January. The Wall Street Journal wrote about it just a few days ago. Would going back to AFRICOM's 2020 levels in Somalia, would that be enough?
Look, so I'm not going to go down the path of the advice that I've given my chain of command to the Secretary of Defense. I've rendered my advice. I believe the Secretary has rendered his advice to the White House, and we have to let our leaders have the time and space to make their decision, especially right now with Ukraine going on, right? So there's a lot on the plate right now. So I think we can wait for that decision. And I don't want to go down speculating about what my advice was or what would be good or not good.
Understandable, sir. So no decision has been rendered to you?
No decision that I'm aware of yet.
And then just talking about the threats, you've talked about the threat al-Shabaab is to the homeland. Is al-Shabaab the greatest threat that the homeland faces on the continent currently?
They are. They are the greatest threat. They are the number one terrorist threat in Africa today. Al-Shabaab is an arm of al-Qaeda. They're the largest, the wealthiest, and the most lethal arm of al-Qaeda on the globe today. They not only aspire and have the capability to attack Americans in Africa, they aspire to attack Americans outside of the region and even in the homeland. They may not have the capability today. I would say that's actually an open question if they have the capability to do that or not.
It's an open question?
Yeah.
You don't know for certain?
No, I suspect that they do. That's not widely accepted in Washington, but or in the intel community. But my instincts as a commander are that they do.
Are they free to roam in Somalia right now? Are they getting enough resistance from U.S. allies and U.S. forces? We haven't seen any airstrikes, so there's not really a threat there for that. Talk a little bit about what al-Shabaab has gained over these past weeks concerning their freedom of movement, concerning their ability to, are they able to train freely?
So over the last year plus, al-Shabaab has enjoyed great freedom of movement and throughout Somalia. And now they can't go wherever they want, whenever they want. There are Somali National Army forces deployed widely across the country. There are AMISOM forces deployed. That's the African Union mission in Somalia. They're deployed widely across the country. And we are in and out, and we're always watching. So Al-Shabaab can't go wherever they want, whenever they want. But they do enjoy a great deal of freedom of movement. And it is my assessment that over the last year, they have grown bigger, stronger, and bolder.
Isn't that really concerning? Shouldn't Americans and Africans be concerned about this?
It's concerning to me, for sure. I think that others should share my concern about this problem. This freedom of action that they have, there's a lot of components to that. Probably first and foremost is the political dysfunction that we've seen in Mogadishu. The current president is more than a year past his mandate, and they're still trying to get to elections. There is a little bit of light on the horizon there. Their parliamentary elections have almost been completed, which is a necessary step for them to have presidential elections after that. Then another factor is AMISOM. AMISOM, the African Union mission there, is in transition. And so there's been a lot of discussion about what they're going to transition to. I think they're coming to agreement on the next phase in the life of AMISOM. But because of that transition, that has slowed their operations. And then I've already discussed the frictions on our counterterrorism pressure as well. So for all those reasons, Al-Shabaab has enjoyed greater freedom of movement in the last year than they have in some time.
And then just a couple more on Somalia. One of my colleagues at VOA had said it appears that Al-Shabaab is increasing its suicide bombings. Have you seen that as well?
I'd have to pull the string on that. I don't know if I've seen an increase in the suicide bombings. There have been a recent spate of them in Mogadishu, but we've seen them, I think, in larger numbers since I've been at AFRICOM. But what I have seen, what's different, is it was about 4 weeks ago, I was in Mogadishu on a visit, and Al-Shabaab pulled off a complex, multi-target coordinated attack one night while we were there. And they attacked 4 or 5 separate, distinct objectives in the city almost simultaneously, which is something I have not seen in my nearly 3 years at AFRICOM. They have been able to do a car bomb or a suicide vest or a mortar attack, but I never saw them attack 4 or 5 targets in the same night like they did about 1 month ago. So that's my indicator of their growing capability.
Mm-hmm. And what about ISIS in Somalia? Are they growing as well?
ISIS in Somalia is a very small presence in a remote area of Somalia. However, they have an important role. So they wear one hat as the ISIS Somali, but they wear another hat, which is called the Al-Qarar office. So they work for a corporate ISIS and a core ISIS, and their role is to move money in and out for the Directorate of Remote Provinces. And that is a very important function they have that's outside. It's larger than their role as ISIS Somalia, is this function of moving money in and out of Africa. There's enough money there that they're providing money for other ISIS operations globally.
Huh. And that's originating in Somalia?
Yeah.
What about ISIS elsewhere? Are they able to funnel those funds
Yes.
to not only to Africa,
from
but
outside the continent to other ISIS groups in the continent and vice versa.
And what about the ISIS groups that are over in Western Africa, or the terror groups there? What are you seeing? What's the most concerning thing to you?
The most concerning thing I'm seeing in West Africa is the number 2 threat in Africa is not ISIS, it's another arm of Al-Qaeda. It's a group called JNIM, Jamaat al-Nusrat wal Muslimin. Now you know why we just call them JNIM. So JNIM is an arm of Al-Qaeda. They are an extension of Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, and they are very active, and they are on the march and taking new ground, expanding from Mali into Burkina Faso and now into the northern provinces of the littoral states on the Gulf of Guinea. Second, I think after in West Africa to them would be ISIS West Africa around the Lake Chad Basin, northeastern Nigeria, and ISIS Greater Sahara over to the northwest. ISIS Greater Sahara is in a competition with JNIM, and JNIM has the upper hand right now. So ISIS Greater Sahara's operations and expansions are limited because they're being suppressed by another terrorist organization. Unlike we see in other parts of the world where ISIS and Al-Qaeda are in competition. But those threats are regional threats today, not significant threats to U.S. interest in the region and not significant threats to Americans beyond the region. But I'm very concerned about the impact they're having on our partners there.
Human Rights Watch just came out with something about Mali and said that the Malian army, Islamist groups had killed at least 107 people since December. They were saying that they were executing village chiefs, even children. This is, of course, where you're seeing a spike in the Wagner group there helping the Malian government stay in power. What are you seeing on the ground there? Can you confirm any of this from Human Rights Watch?
Okay, so they're conflating the Malian army with the terrorists. I would say that I have little doubt that the terrorists in Mali have killed 107 or more people in that time frame. We do see the Malian army, armed forces, engaged in operations, and frequently we do see human rights abuses as part of those operations because they are not well trained and they're not a very disciplined force. They've ostensibly brought in Wagner to help them with this, but I don't believe that Wagner will be able to help them with this problem. So I think probably the number one purveyor of violence in Mali is not the security forces, but it's the terrorists. I have no doubt, however, that there are human rights abuses that are committed by the Malian armed forces because of their levels of training and discipline.
This was your last SASC, Senate Armed Services Committee testimony. You are ending your time as the commander of AFRICOM, and I was hoping to get your thoughts, your reflections about the continent. What would you like the next AFRICOM commander to focus on? What are you most worried about that has left to be done?
Well, I think I would tell my successor, first of all, this is a great job. I love this job. There are a lot of challenges all the time and not a lot of resources, so you really have to think. And so we have our hands full constantly wrestling with these challenges, which makes it an exciting place to work. I'd also say that the African continent is fascinating because of its massive scale. There's so much life and culture down there that it's everywhere you go, it'll be a new learning experience. As far as what the challenges are that my successor will have to grapple with, they won't be that different from the challenges that we're grappling with now. I suspect that we'll still have primarily our first threat will be violent extremists in East Africa, Al-Qaeda, and Al-Qaeda and ISIS elsewhere, in West Africa and elsewhere. And then I think that my successor will have to continue to deal with malign activity from Russia, particularly Wagner. And then I think China is certainly it's our pacing threat for our Department of Defense. It's also the pacing threat for strategic competition on the African continent. I think my successor will have their hands full, and the challenges will be significant, but it'll be good, hard government work.
Well, General Stephen Townsend, AFRICOM commander, a leader in Iraq, helping to fight ISIS in Libya. You've had an incredible career. Thank you for your service, and thank you so much for speaking with Voice of America.
Thanks, Carla. I think I'd like to just close by saying I want the American people to know what their men and women are doing in Africa every day. There are a handful, less than 6,000 troops, 6,000 and change if you include our DoD civilians and our interagency colleagues, and they're working really hard to protect and advance America's interests and keep America safe every day in Africa.
Well, thank you again for speaking with us.
Thanks, Carla.